Hi everyone, Shiloh here. Time for another chapter into the 25 to Life Working in a Prison series. And you know what? I thought about it. It's not just working in a prison, it's work anywhere. It's being bullied, being harassed, being taken advantage of, and when you know your rights or you're a whistleblower, there should not be retaliation. So this is just my experience from working in a prison. But the labor part and the working part could be shared with anybody. All right, so where I left off is I wasn't getting the overtime I wanted, so I asked for overtime. And then when I asked for overtime, I was given so much work, I couldn't get a day off, and it was making me sick. 8, 9, and then when I did call out sick after working 9 or 10 days straight, I'd be reprimanded for calling out sick. So I finally went to my union rep. I'm like, I can't win. It's like, I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. When I call out, I get in trouble. When I work too many hours, I get sick. If I don't work too many hours and ask for more hours, I get extra hours. It was just a big mess. I should have just kept my mouth shut, but it was around Christmas time. I wanted the overtime. She was giving it to everybody else, this being the supervisor. I wasn't getting it. Daisy was getting a lot, and the evening nurse was getting a lot. I was not. So I asked for it, I got it, but in excess, 8, 9, 10. I think the longest stretch I worked was 12 days in a row without a day off. And it would get to me. And then I'd ask for time off, it would be denied, but instead of denying it, she would just shred the paperwork and say no. So I had no proof. So I had to document everything. I asked for it, kept my copy of the pink slip, and she would shred hers. But keeping my copy doesn't mean anything. It just means I filled out a time off slip. So finally, after back and forth, going to my union rep, telling me to document everything, I get called into the office again. And every time I get called into the office, of course, my agony, my stress, my anxiety goes up because I know I'm going to get a tongue lashing. And I'm going to read what I wrote in my journal verbatim. And I was called into the supervisor's office. Let me just clean my glasses. And this was after going to my union rep about getting vacation and time off denied when I was busting my butt for that jail. And really, I gave 120% of myself. All right. So I get called into the office. And this is what I get. Have a seat. Let me tell you a story, she says. When I started working here, this is in the facility I was at, I told you I didn't want to be like other administrators and supervisors. I am, quote unquote, nice. Maybe I'm too nice. I believe you're mistaking my kindness for weakness. I'm getting tired of emails and phone calls from union reps, people above me, the administration, about everything you're complaining about. Well, I'm done. No more. When someone needs time off, I bend over backwards. I make phone calls to get people time off, even you. Mind you, I haven't had time off, and she's been denying it. So this is a bold-faced lie. Now, you want time off? Question. Find your own coverage if you want to take time off. Meaning, if I wanted to take a day off or I wanted a vacation, I had to find another nurse to work for me. And we are so short-staffed, it's hard. You have to call in a temporary, part-time, or agency nurse, and then they deny it because that costs the facility a lot of money, and it comes out of the medical unit's budget. All right. So I'd have to find my own coverage for time off. No more, she says. I'm not going to be nice. No more. Anybody wants to leave early? No more. Anybody wants to come in late? No more. They will know this change because of you. I will let them know this is because of you. This is how it's going to be. So now she's going to tell all the other nurses that if they want time off, they have to find their own coverage. She's not going to let people come in late. She's not going to let people leave early because of me. Real nice. Then, after this meeting, she leaves at 8 a.m. She left because she had to take her daughter to school. Okay. She then came back around 9-ish. And this was all after she said no more leaving early, no more coming in late. All right. Then Daisy continues to leave every other day because she also has to take her daughter from school because now her daughter has that DUI and her license is suspended. So she has to take her daughter to and from school. She leaves for a couple hours every day. And she doesn't put time off slips in. Sorry, that was my robot vacuum hitting my table. She doesn't put time off slips in. She just goes. And the supervisor goes, yep, go, come back. Now, if she's off campus, off the facility, and gets into a car accident, and she doesn't have approved time off, whose fault is it? You know, how do you, oh, I know what she'll do. She'll forge a time off slip and say, oh, I gave her the time off. Anyway. Daisy will get up, say, oh, gotta go. She'll leave the unit, and I'm by myself. Now, you have to have 2 nurses minimum on staff at all times. So I'm by myself. And if there's a medical emergency, I'm stuck doing it by myself. I have to handle meds, sick call, anything that comes up, I'm doing it myself because she's not there. So I'm doing it all until she gets back. All right. Let's see what's next. So during this time, I was the accreditation person, meaning I would handle paperwork for audits, make sure we were dotting our I's, crossing our T's, making sure everything the facility does was up to Correctional Association standards. Hold on. Okay, so I'm doing accreditation, and like I said, it's part of an audit. We have to meet certain standards, and that was my job because I knew the facility and I knew accreditation. I've been doing it for 9+ years. So I would work in the medical unit. If there was extra nurses, then I'd go to the main building to do accreditation. If there was no extra nurses, then I would stay in medical and do what I could while doing my other jobs. So she'd hire extra nurses, per diems, overtime, so I could go do accreditation. I hated accreditation. I felt like I was being punished. She wants to kiss me. You want to kiss me? Okay. I felt like I was being punished. You have to stop. I think she wants coffee. Aria, hold on. Let me get her a drink. Now, when I would gather samples for the medical unit for this accreditation audit, each sample would go in a certain folder. And my supervisor would go to the administration building when I was working, check in on me, make sure I'm doing my job, take the folders and go back to the medical unit. And you're not supposed to do that. It has confidential information regarding inmates and employees, and it does not leave the administration building. But she would take it every time and go, I don't care. Like, no big deal. Like, so who's going to stop me? Well, the warden might. Our warden is called the superintendent. So if I ever say superintendent or warden, they intertwine. I said, you can't do that. So anyway, the facility health director was the B word. She was insecure. She didn't know her job. She was a horrible doctor. And it almost was like, I don't want to say early dementia or something, but something was going on. I know she had a lot of pain in her neck or shoulder and was on medication, so I don't know if that was attributing to it. But she was very nitpicky about what I did, and always with the magnifying glass, like trying to find something wrong. And a lot of my grief is her. And my supervisor and this facility director in the medical unit would talk to each other, and what can we do today? How can we get her today? And it sounds like it's paranoia, but I tell you, it is the God's honest truth that these two, and I know they work together, because one would call me in her office, the other would be there. The other one would call me in her office, the other, and it's like they were trying to find fault with everything I did, but couldn't. So on one occasion, in the infirmary, I'll talk about this one, for example, we have an officer in the front of the medical unit and an officer in the back, because it's a big medical unit. So they always want to have 2 officers on duty to take care of safety and security, care, custody, and control of inmates, and make sure the nurses were okay, especially when inmates were at the back of the infirmary, because they had poor sight lines. So I was working in the back of the infirmary, and I think I was doing a doctor call out, like working with inmates that had to see the doctor, doing vitals, things like that. We also had a 4-bed infirmary for convalescing inmates, and we had two isolation rooms. Now, an isolation room is a negative pressure room. It's a room you walk into, there's an antepartum section, like a vestibule, and then you go into the other room. Very solid doors. It has a mechanism that shows you that there's negative pressure. People that go in this kind of room is someone with tuberculosis, an airborne illness, infectious disease that's active, and this way it protects the rest of the medical unit because of the negative pressure. So I know you want my attention. For some reason, the isolation rooms weren't working one day, and there were inmates in there. Now, when an isolation room goes down, if you can't get it back up within a couple hours, you have to ship those inmates out, because imagine having someone with tuberculosis in an isolation room. Now the system fails. Now, instead of all the infectious disease going out through the air filtration system, it just blows back into the medical unit. So now everybody's exposed. So one day the isolation rooms were down, and there were inmates in there. Yes, I know. Give me 1 second. She wants my attention. So the isolation rooms weren't working. And I believe it was mid-spring. It was like around end of March. So it was kind of warm inside because the heat was still on. Well, when the isolation rooms are down, the air conditioning's down, the cooling, everything is down. There's no lights, no fire alarm, no nothing. So the officer in the back of the clinic, who has since retired, was very friendly with inmates. He'd bring them coffee, do favors for them, fax them paperwork, make copies. He was friendly, which is a big no-no. You never do that, because inmates can now have something on you, and they can go to a sergeant and say, hey, this officer did this, and you could lose your job. So all the isolation rooms are down. So the officer is talking to the inmate. The inmate complains that it's really hot in there. You know, I tell the inmate, the officer's with me. I tell the inmate, maintenance is working on it. We can't do anything right now because it's broken. Hindsight, I read my notes. This inmate did not have an infectious disease. I can't remember. I think he had MRSA or something like that, which is a staph infection. Although it's not airborne, it's contact. So if you come in contact with it and you have an open wound, you can get MRSA. Everybody has staph on their body. It is what it is. But then they have these antibiotic resistant staph that turn into super infections. And I think that's what the inmate had. So it's too hot in there. He doesn't want to be in there. He's complaining, bitching and moaning. I tell him maintenance is working on it. We're trying to get it working. I leave. The officer props the door open. It's a no-no, but the inmate is still in the room. Okay. Well, the inmate still complains that it's too hot. He's telling the officer, come on, dude, I got to get out of here. It's too hot. The officer takes the inmate, walks him over to the dorm where the other infirmed inmates are that are recovering from surgery, colds, flu, whatever. So now he takes an infected inmate with a severe staph infection and puts him into an infirmary next to inmates that are convalescing for other issues that probably have compromised immune systems and whatnot. So he puts him in there. I go to check on the inmate. I'm like, where is he? The officer tells me he put him in the dorm. I'm like, okay. So my note says that I documented in the inmate's medical record that the officer did this. I need to protect myself. I explained to the officer about infectious disease. You can't do that. You know, the inmate has to stay in the isolation room. I explained everything. He didn't want to hear it. I don't butt heads with security because they need to get my back if something happens. So, okay. Now the doctor, who has a gripe with me, decides to walk down the hallway. I don't know why, because she never leaves her office, but she decided to go into the infirmary. Sees the inmate that was supposed to be in the isolation room in the infirmary. Wants to know who authorized this move, who told him he could go in there, because you can't take someone out of an isolation room without a doctor's order. You can't discharge them, you can't move them, you can't do nothing without a doctor's order or a sergeant, because those are the only two people really, or you know, somebody above a sergeant, way above my pay grade. Long story short, she pitches a fit, blows up, starts accusing me. 3 other nurses in the unit, a nurse supervisor, 2 officers, you know, other staff, and she blames me. Okay, this is where documentation is really important. So I go get the inmate's chart. I documented that at this time, this officer moved inmate, blah, blah, blah. While I'm doing this, she's ripping me a new one, scolding me, telling I'm going to get written up. I had no right moving him out of the infirmary, out of the isolation room, that I'm obeying direct orders, that she's going to call a sergeant and have me locked out, just ripping into me. The officer turns around and said, oh, I did it. I moved him. And she went, oh, okay, and walked away. Meanwhile, she chewed me a new one, was screaming at me in front of all the inmates, in front of the officer, because she wanted to blame me, and it wasn't me. So that's the kind of environment I was working in. I was getting blamed, accused, thrown under the bus whenever they could, even though I did nothing wrong. Hold on. Now, during this whole time, the doctor, she was very scatterbrained. Maybe it was dementia, maybe it wasn't. She was scatterbrained. She was giving us charts without orders, or writing orders for the wrong inmate, ordering medication for the wrong inmate, wrong medication, just all kinds of mistakes. And we'd have to give her back the chart, she'd have to fix it, so on and so on, just nonstop. And it was cumbersome because you don't want to make a mistake, and you constantly have to watch what the doctor's doing. So next time you have to deal with a nurse, give them props, because they got your back. They are your advocates. I know. See, I told them that. So keep that in mind. She was getting more and more scatterbrained. I'm going to end it now because this little girl wants my attention. She got so fussy, she actually pulled my sweater off. If you want to continue hearing stories, subscribe to this YouTube channel, because this is where I keep updating them on the playlist, and they're in chronological order as I do them. Like, and also set those notifications to all, so you get all notifications when I go live with the continuation of the story. It's going to get juicy, I promise. So spread the word, share it if you like it, comment below if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer. If you're experiencing anything, maybe I can relate to it and cover something that happened to me. So I will see you guys in the next chapter. Please be safe, be well, be kind to one another. Don't harass each other. It's not worth it. All right, take care. Bye now.